one of the lies is that leadership is a thing. No, the truth is leaders have followers. No.
Yeah.
So, and why do people follow? Well, Gallup in strengths-based leadership identified 4 things. I believe there are 2 that underpin those before you get into those 4. So first of all and foundationally, people follow leaders who have humility. And what is humility? Humility is 3 things. Humility is having a very accurate self-perception of who you are.
Hey, welcome back everyone to the Lead Well, Live Well podcast, where we have authentic conversations with interesting leaders. I have a great guy today, someone who I've known for a number of years, although we haven't spoken for a while, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Nathanael Small, he is the founder of Work2Live. He's also an expert leadership advisor with specialties in partnerships and intrapreneurship. And really looking forward to this conversation. You also work for the university's Nato. Tell us what you're doing there with Western.
So yeah, I'm at Western Sydney University, or Western as we call ourselves. In a headline, and this is full attribution to the Thought Leaders Business School, is that I help clever people be commercially smart. So the paragraph is I educate, equip and empower senior academic leaders, so professors and associate professors, to take what they know and help them package it up in a way that they can go outside the university and build partnerships that are sustainable and transformational with any kind of external organisation, doing applied research and consultancy work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is you make it sound like an easy thing, but trying to translate research and innovative educators into a commercial environment, that's not an easy place to be.
It's gotten easier. What I love is I thrive in startup environments, and every academic is a startup.
Right.
It's like Reid Hoffman's book, The Startup of You. You need to think entrepreneurially, which is why I love intrapreneurship, because it's people inside organisations driving innovation and change and growth. And helping them really distill the uniqueness of them and all of their knowledge and experience that they've accumulated. And professors, you're talking about people who've got careers of 25 years.
Yeah.
So they're right at the top end of the tree. They're mentoring early and mid-career researchers. They're doing large-scale research projects. And the good thing for me is that applied research is fundamentally about solving problems. And I have a very laser beam focused approach on identifying problems and ways of helping them think about how they approach problem solving, and ways that help them think about how they actually approach going to market. That give them the potential to grow fast. And I've been there 8 years, so I know enough to be dangerous.
And also relationships too. I presume it takes you have to build relationships with the academics to be able for them to trust you to look at commercialising?
Yeah. And I mean, the good thing is the university has a huge drive on it, because if you're aware of what's going on in the sector, there's tremendous pressures for the institutions to become self-sustaining. The overseas student furor that's going on at the moment with international student caps and that, which is the public debate is not what's really going on, and hopefully the government will see common sense and the bipartisan support for the new legislation won't cut universities off at the knees.
Yes.
But the university.
So are you seeing that? So you're seeing that as a kind of reaction to the immigration thing? Is that?
Yeah, the immigration thing's a furphy. Like you look at Western's situation, and we don't have an immigration problem. We have a low number of overseas students, but they're all very targeted in sectors which actually benefit the state economy.
Right.
So, for example, we had 1,500 overseas nursing students. And the vast majority of those plug straight into the Department of Health in their first year out, where there is a crippling shortage of nurses. So if they put a cap on us, we lose a huge chunk of those, and the state government suffers.
Wow. Okay, that's an inside view you don't hear very often. That's for sure. Can I come back to the other thing that you're doing? I know you've always had a fascination with leadership, and you're a leadership advisor. You founded Work2Live. Tell us a little bit about your own leadership journey, or how you got into this sort of thought leadership piece.
Well, my own leadership journey has been quite wandering. If you look at my vocational path from purely a career perspective, it's kind of, it would almost look like a wounded deer wandering around from one random thing to the other. But there's a through line there. My first role out when I graduated from university was with a missionary organisation. I was a missionary to university students doing leadership development, helping young adults grow and mature in their leadership skills. So that's where I first got the taste of mentoring, training, coaching individuals, small groups, speaking at weekly meetings, running state conferences. So I got immersed in that environment of working with young adults. And when I transitioned out of that, I moved into, of all things, a boutique consulting firm who specialised in corporate superannuation and industrial relations and the intersection of those.
Right.
So there was not a lot of people understood what was really going on, but the guy who founded the business had a unique perspective from years in the national executive of the trade union movement to understand the way the wind was blowing with superannuation. And this is back in the mid-90s. And he could see $4 trillion in superannuation in Australia by 2030 and said one group should not have control of all of that. And the way you did it was through an industrial relations mechanism where you used enterprise bargaining agreements to nominate the super funds.
Right, okay. So he really did a lot of transitioning in that.
He was visionary.
Absolutely.
He saw, and this is where I got the whole picture of you need to do things that are statesman-like. You need to make calls that are going to have a positive intergenerational impact. And so he did that. He broke the stranglehold of the industry funds were owned by the unions and allowed the big four banks and the insurers who had super funds to actually get access to the market. So he had left a huge legacy.
Massive transformation. I mean, we'd have a very different set of circumstances now if that hadn't have happened.
Yeah. So that gave me a taste of that. Then I moved into financial services, got trained as an advisor. So I moved from the consulting into the advisory space, which started to give me a taste of that David Maister trusted advisor thing. So you're sitting in people's living rooms talking about fairly significant life stuff. How much insurance do you need if you were to die today to make sure your family was looked after? So that kind of holistic look at the family unit, integrated planning from an insurance protection, wealth accumulation, wealth transfer, estate planning, all that kind of stuff. And that was in the mid-90s when the industry was going through a massive pressure to upskill and professionalise, going from the white shoe brigade insurance salesman to a professional advisor. So accounting firms were starting to recruit and train financial planners to be integrated and that. So, and I was working for a medium-sized accounting firm in Newcastle. That lasted for a couple of years and did okay with that. But then when that wrapped up, I ended up co-founding a marketing consultancy with a close friend of mine.
Man, you have had, as you say, wandering deer. So you've been all in,
and that was late 90s. That was 99.
You had all these different spheres of influence and areas, but they seem to have a common thread around partnership, innovation, maybe on some of the cutting edge of change. Is that what led you into the university space?
So Neuro, the marketing consultancy, ran to 2004. Then I went to a global training, coaching, consulting company who did workplace transformation around productivity and workload management, and I immersed myself deeply in the government space and grew to being a key account director looking after the Department of Defence across Australasia. And that was where I first got exposed to the world of strengths. And the positive psychology and the Gallup organisation and all that kind of stuff.
I love the Gallup. That's the thing.
And awesome. that really, the lights went on around, okay, I'm getting a window into how I'm uniquely hardwired, which is what Clifton Strengths Finder was designed to help you name and claim and aim and how I'm nothing like your conventional white shoe salesman banging on doors, making hundreds of cold calls, all the rest of it. I take a very different approach. But I'm incredibly successful. How is that so? Because of who I am. So that took me a deep dive down into the Gallup world. And from my years as a missionary trainee, we had a very intensive year where we did a lot of personality diagnostics, gifts diagnostics, and all the rest of it. So, and all of them gave me data points, and I was obsessed about the who. Who am I? And So through priority management, that took me through to 2009, then got headhunted to work for a global manufacturing company in material science engineering who produced second-tier supplier to global prime original equipment manufacturers, producing boutique niche componentry, all from a base of carbon as a material element. And it was a dream come true job because I was still looking after defence and I was hired for my domain knowledge. But they said, we need to reinvent our market. Go around the world, look at our technology portfolios. Here's our technology roadmap and strategy of how we create and bring into our business line and go through a maturity adoption cycle. Look at all of that, map the Australasian market and come up with a blueprint for us to access the market. So that was so much fun.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, that's just almost a blank sheet, isn't it?
It was a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, love it.
So I was a startup. I travelled around the country. I got into Southeast Asia a bit, helping out in those countries where there was startup activity. And I built a whole go-to-market map for them to basically transform the Australasian business.
Love it.
And then from there I went into my own consultancy.
Right.
Which was around go-to-market and around the defence space and around that. And then from there, after 3.5 years of chipping away at that, the opportunity came up with Western.
Okay.
So that leads me to the last 8 years.
That's great. That's quite a journey. And you talked a little bit about some of the commonality in there and the innovation and going to market. And where have you sort of landed on leadership and some of the fundamentals around what makes a good leader? I love what you're saying about the Strength Finder. I still think the Clifton Strength Finder is one of the best tools out there, and I use it. Find it very, very effective. What do you think some of the leadership fundamentals are that are important to be a successful leader, particularly considering how fast the marketplace is moving and how innovative we need to be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what we've got to realise is that leadership theory has evolved over the last 200 years out of a Western individualist, personality-driven ethic, which is fundamentally flawed. You need to go back to the classic virtues, but combine it with modern science, and this is where I drive heavily from Marcus Buckingham.
Right.
Actually, Buckingham and Goodall's book, 9 Lies About Work, brilliant piece of work. One of the lies is that leadership is a thing. No, the truth is leaders have followers. So, and why do people follow? Well, Gallup in strengths-based leadership identified 4 things. I believe there are 2 that underpin those before you get into those 4. So, first of all and foundationally, people follow leaders who have humility. And what is humility? Humility is 3 things. Humility is having a very accurate self-perception of who you are. So not thinking of yourself more highly than you ought, so the pride piece, but not thinking of yourself more lowly than you ought, saying, oh, I'm just to fill in the blank. No, it's confidence, not arrogance. Knowing deeply who you are, knowing what the power is that you have at your disposal and your ability to influence, and then being able to exercise that power in service of others.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. It's a great framework. Really, really good.
So that who question, who am I, is fundamentally important, and that's a lifelong journey. Like if you look at Clinton, J. Robert Clinton's Making of a Leader, and you look, say, for example, the life of Jesus. As a kid, you see him in the temple, and they're amazed at his insight, and then he vanishes for 23 years, roughly, and he pops up on the scene with a bang. And he goes public. So your brain doesn't mature until you're 25, men until you're about 29, which is why insurers charge like wounded balls for male drivers, because they can't calculate risk.
Sure.
And their brain isn't functioning.
I might still be suffering from that.
In a mature way, yeah. So it's not until you get into your 30s that you really start, in your 20s, you're figuring out who am I, you're exploring, you're trying a whole bunch of different stuff. And then if you've been on this vocational development path, you reach a point when you're 30 where you start to get a handle on who you are and your contribution starts to get more strategic around what you do. So that humility piece, like I'm 54 on Monday. And
happy birthday.
Thank you. And my hope is that by the time I'm 60, I have a word for the decade, which I got when I was 49 after my Jubilee year. I said, when I was turning 50, I said, where do I want to be when I'm 60?
Yep.
And I said, give me a word that's going to be like a contextual beacon, like a North Star that I can keep asking myself, what would fill in the blank do?
Right.
And the word I got was sage.
Right. Okay. Yep.
And a sage is a profoundly wise person.
For sure.
So I'm on this obsessive hunt for wisdom now.
Well, you got a chunk of it already, Nato. So
So humility.
Yep.
Then people follow people who show humility, display humility. People follow people who show character.
Yeah.
And for me, that comes straight out of Galatians 5:23-24, the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, goodness, kindness, patience, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control.
Yeah.
Those 9 characteristics are really foundational, and they're character qualities which you can be taught and you can learn by example, by seeing them in other people.
Yeah. Love it.
So humility, character, and then you get into Gallup's 4 needs of followers. People follow people who build trust. People follow people who show compassion. People follow people who create stability. And people follow people who generate hope.
Love it.
And Clifton Strengths Finder has really expanded on this now. They actually have a report for leaders, and they actually show you how through your strengths you uniquely do those things.
Totally. And often, whenever you drill down to these things, they seem like a soft list, like hope, trust. And yet you talk to most leaders, it's not even their vocabulary. And yet it's intrinsically true. I found that in my own leadership journey. As I got older, a little more wisdom, a little more humble. I've been through the fire a few times and so built a little bit of character. But that creating an environment of trust, hope, and a culture of honor where you're respecting every individual, giving them due deference.
Yeah, and the science is coming in. Like 15 years ago, Stephen M.R. Covey, the grandson of Stephen R., the son of Stephen M., Stephen M was the grandfather. Stephen R was the father who wrote 7 Habits.
Yeah.
And Stephen M.R. was the son.
Right.
And he wrote The Speed of Trust.
Oh, yes.
And he came up with the trust formula. You can mathematically calculate trust.
Yep.
And the economic impact of trust in terms of companies who have trust in their supply chains, have lower costs and higher profits. Yeah. I mean,
and even I think the engagement factor, I think is one that's always been interesting to me around culture and trust. If you can build trust, you can move from compliance to commitment.
Yeah, and conviction.
And just people want to be a part of that. They want to roll out of bed on a Monday morning, be a part of what's going on. Clear vision, sense of purpose that you talked about before, but a trusted environment where people are valued. You mentioned Marcus Buckingham. I'm fascinated. I haven't read his new book yet. I know you have. I've always, if you think about the way I was just articulating things, the next step is love. And I've always resisted communicating about love in business because it's such a dichotomy for most people's experience. And yet Marcus Buckingham seems to have crossed that bridge. Where is he at with that and what's he saying?
Well, love plus work, it's really his legacy piece to the world. I mean, he's written 12 bestsellers. He founded it. He was in Gallup and was inside the room with Donald Clifton when he created StrengthsFinder. He's a data scientist, so he's driven by what is huge sets of numbers. How do we parse those and slice and dice those to generate insights? And what he realised was that in 9 Lies About Work, the 8th lie is that work-life balance is it. No, love in work is it. And how do you define love? How do you know you love something? Well, you're excited about it. You look at any activity that you love, spending time with your wife, driving sports cars, whatever it might be. You're excited about it. You look forward to it. When you're doing it, you're fully immersed and engaged. You achieve a flow state. You lose track of time. You feel energized. When it's over, you go, that was incredible. I might be a bit tired, but I can't wait to do that again. And now hate is the exact opposite. You dread. You procrastinate. If you're an iPhone, when you're doing it, you feel like your battery is draining away at an incredibly rapid rate. And when you're finished, you go, thank God that's over. I hope I never have to do that again. So that's the difference between love and hate. And work, I love his definition, is anything you do that creates value for somebody else.
Right.
So it's not just what you're paid to do.
Yeah.
It can be a volunteer activity. It can be a hobby. Anything where you create value for somebody else, where you're in love. And what he realized and what the science shows, and this is out of the Mayo Clinic, says that if you can do something you love every day, and he calls the activities that you love, that's how he defines a strength. A strength is any activity that strengthens you. Any activity you love doing, the more specific the activity, the better. The specificity is really important. And he calls them red threads.
Right.
And if you can do something you love every day, no matter how small, and if you can, over the course of a week, weave red threads into 20% of your time doing activities that you love, that's the minimum effective dose to take Tim Ferriss's 4 hour week, 4 hour body, 4 hour chef. What's the MED?
Yeah.
If you can achieve 20%, the switch flips.
Right.
And you are more engaged, more creative, more innovative, more resilient, more productive.
Yeah.
If you get more than 20%, yay you. That's wonderful. But that's all you need.
Isn't that interesting?
So the game that you have to play, because when people go on their work-life journey, you start with a job. And often it's a subsistence job. Like my first job was a waiter in a pancakes restaurant.
Yeah.
Gave me some pocket money. But it wasn't a career, a job. It was starting out. It was a bit of survival. And I loved it. I had a ball. But it wasn't a career. A career is a series of roles where hopefully you are making forward progress and growing and moving. Up is not necessarily the right word, because that implies climbing the ladder. Sure. And like Covey says, you don't want to climb the ladder and realise it's up against the wrong wall when you get to the top. But the career can mean that, but it can also mean to flail about aimlessly.
Yeah.
And if you look at my career, on the surface, it can seem like a lot of that flailing about, but the through line of who I am will maintain the same. Yeah. And if you can get that 20% love, and the game that you play is you get a Word document or a Google Doc or whatever you have it on your desktop, or you have a notes app on your phone or whatever you do. And anytime you catch yourself doing a love activity, the more specific the better, write it down.
Yeah. And so you can measure and monitor your 20%.
You start tracking it.
And do you have that? 20%?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm more than 20% now. I mean, I had an experience last year where I was with work at Western, where I was at the end of every day just feeling wasted. And I got to the end of the week and I was just collapsing into bed, and I was struggling to get out of bed over the weekend. And I was thinking, what's going on? I mean, I've got bipolar 2 and you can have depressive episodes independent of mania. And I was thinking, I'm not depressed. I was trying to do some root cause analysis. I said, what is going on? Yeah. And then I was sitting at my desk plowing through a whole bunch of admin, and I'm very efficient at the admin. And this light bulb went on inside of me and says, Nato, there's no love in what you're doing.
Right.
And I actually started crying, and I'm not a crier.
Yeah.
Because I realised I was just spending 95% of my time on hates.
Yeah.
So I came away from that. I shut down my computer. I took the afternoon off, went away, had a good heart to heart with my wife, and doubled down saying, I've got to find the love.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
That's so good, isn't it? I like it's the sort of next level of some of the thinking that I've done over the years around leadership, because even if you didn't have an altruistic bone in your body, you didn't want the best welfare for your team. If you create an environment when that can happen, you're going to do well commercially, because people are going to be energized, engaged, sense of purpose, finding their life in the midst of that.
Yeah, and that teaming is really, really vital. Like the Buckingham research, Ashley Goodall was the VP of Talent Intelligence at Cisco.
Right.
And when Buckingham had the Marcus Buckingham Company, he got into Facebook, he got into Cisco, he got into big global enterprises and built massive data sets of people. And what they discovered is that 91% of the work happens on teams and organisations. And you're often on more than one team at any one time. Challenge is teams don't have a culture, and culture is built on shared language. So there's no agreed language around what are the categories of human behaviour that elevate team culture and elevate team performance, and how do you actually design work and unearth the uniqueness of individuals so that team intelligence can start to come into play. But Gallup research from It's the Manager, their third to last most recent book, showed that 70% of the employee experience is mediated through your manager.
Absolutely.
So it's that old adage, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses.
100%.
And the first lie in 9 lies is that people care about what organisation they work for. No, they care about what team they're on. You will stay with a good team in a bad organisation, and you will leave a good organisation if you're on a bad team.
So true. So true. Wow, I feel like I've been fire hosed with a lot of thought around
Sorry,
leadership. There's a lot going on there.
That's a bit like me. Sorry.
Anything that we've missed, do you think, around something that would help, say, young aspiring leaders coming through? Anything else that they should know? You talked about humility, character.
Yeah. I mean, I think the humility piece is the who. I think you need to have a healthy obsession with who am I.
Yeah. Go on that journey.
Yeah.
Yep.
Be intentional about that journey.
Yep.
Pursue love. And as you find your loves, they will help shape you. And leaders need to think consciously about designing love into work.
Just another it's another whole level, isn't it?
It's a terrible travesty that people's leaders are not aware of who their people are and aren't helping them week by week, 1% better every week, nudging them towards their loves. And it's that 20% in the position description that says other duties as ascribed by your manager. If you can fill that 20% of other duties with their loves, magic happens.
Absolutely. And it's a relatively small piece, isn't it? 20% is enough. You can do that.
So I'd say obsess about who, then obsess about why. Why am I here? What is my massively transformational purpose? And that comes from Stephen Kotler's The Art of Impossible and Peter Diamandis with Singularity University. Organisations, big global organisations now, purpose is huge, but what is my massively transformational purpose? And the exciting thing about Western is that we have one now. It's called positive impact, 2 words. Those 2 words are hardwired into our DNA, and it's the interpretive lens through which we view any activity that we're going to undertake.
Great clarity. Awesome. Nato, if people wanted to connect with you, have got fascinated by this conversation and want to sort of deep mine a little bit more, how would they contact you?
Easiest way is LinkedIn. Okay. That's the professional global networking community. I live there. I'm very active there. Okay. You can email me stuff. You can follow me, whatever you like. I mean, I don't push myself out into the marketplace. But I'm very happy to have a conversation with anybody who wants to go deep into these
That's
issues.
Great. Well, we'll make sure all those contact details are in the summary below. So we'll make sure that people can reach out to you.
Fantastic.
Nato, fascinating conversation this morning. Really enjoyed spending some time with you today.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Thanks for joining us at the Lead Well, Live Well vodcast. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to know more about what we're all about, you can find us at leadwelllivewell.com.au.